Okay, so I thought I'd put together a quick video on React hooks. Now, I haven't prepared this at all, so there's no script, and I'm probably going to make a load of errors in it, but I learned about hooks earlier today and thought it'd be a good idea to share some of that stuff with you guys. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so we've got a simple component here, which is a functional component. And what we want to do is turn this dummy component, which currently just renders out some HTML, this stuff here. We want to turn this into a component that uses state. So we're going to build a little to-dos app, which lets us delete to-dos and add to-dos. Now, until recently, to do this, we'd have had to turn this into a class-based component. We'd have had to do something like class demo component, and then we'd have had to say it extends React.component, right? But this new thing called hooks means that we can actually have state inside functional components like this, and that's what we're going to have a look at today. I've only just been playing around with this, so I'm not great at this yet, but I thought I'd record a little screencast talking about what I've learned. So the first thing that we want to do is set this up so that we've got maybe a title in here, and then we want to think about the kind of thing that we'd like to actually render out in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do this all in one component. So we're going to render out a form, and then inside the form we're going to have an input. And then underneath this, we want to render out a to-do list with all of the things that we need in it. So we're going to render out an unordered list. And then in that, we basically want to have like a bunch of LIs with like buy milk, or like whatever, buy cheese. And we'll worry about the styling a little bit later on. Okay, yeah, let's get the end URL tag in. We'll worry about the styling later on. This kind of looks ugly at the moment, but we can fix that with a bit of CSS later. What we really need to look at is like how do we get this input to actually store some state for us? And if we want to use the React use state hook, we need to bring that in from React. So we need to say that we want to bring in React, and we also want to bring in this use state hook. And having done that, we can basically come down in here and define a new variable, and we're going to use array destructuring here, and we're going to define a variable called new to do, and also a function called set new to do, and we're going to bring those in from use state, and we need to provide an initial value for this. And since this is actually going to store whatever is typed into our new to do text box, we're just going to set that to an empty string for now. So what this is going to do is create this new to do, which we're going to populate with whatever the user types into this box. And then we've got a set new to do function, which is the equivalent to set state essentially, but it will only set this specific type of state. And we can see how this is going to tidy things up a lot for us. So if we come down to our form and our input element, what we basically want to do in here is we want to update this state, the state that's in new to do, with whatever is currently in this input. So we're going to add an onChange handler, which is going to fire a method called handle new to do change, whenever it's changed. And we're getting an error up here now, which makes sense. Oh, no, we're not, because I'm missing a bracket. We're getting an error now that says handle new to do change isn't defined, which it isn't. So we need to define that, and we're just going to define that as a function in here. So function handle new to do change, and that's going to take in an event. And then inside the event, or inside this handler, what we need to do is first of all prevent the default. So we're going to say e.prevent default, which will prevent the usual behavior happening. And what that means is if I type some stuff in here, we're not going to get any default action happening from that. And then basically all we need to do is we need to set this state. Now we have a function to do that, set new to do. Okay, so we can basically just say set new to do, and we need to pass into that the state that we want to set, and we can get that from the element. So we can get that from the event even, and we can look at the event's target, and the event's target is going to be this this input here, and then we just need to get the value of it. And what we should be able to see now, if we open up the inspector and head over to why isn't it loading? There we are. Head over to React. And now if we come down and have a look at our demo component, we can see that we've got this empty string as the base state in it. And if we start typing some stuff in here, we can see that it updates that base state for us. So what's happening here is whenever this change event's happening, we're calling this handle new to do change. That's going to get the event. We're preventing the default on the event, and then we're using this set new to do function to set this state here. Okay, and if we want to get at that state, it's available inside new to do. So we've kind of got this thing where we're now like mapping the state in here from this box. Okay, which means we've got that available now. The next thing that we want to do is set up another sort of state, which is going to store our list of to-do items. So we can use a very similar pattern for that. We can just say const, and again we'll use array destructuring. So we can do something like, what should we call it? Maybe just to-dos, and then set to-dos. And we're going to do a very similar thing. We're going to use state, and this time the default value for it wants to just be an empty array. Okay, and this is where we're going to put our items later on. And now what we want to do is we want to come over to this form, okay, and I want this form to work whenever I hit enter. Okay, so we just want to put a handler on here for our on submit. Okay, so I'm just going to say on submit, and then we're going to use a function, and this one we're going to make this up. So let's call it handle new to do, maybe to handle new to do, and then we need to define that, and it's going to take an event in exactly the same way. And then what we want to do in here is a very similar thing. We want to just say, okay, we're going to prevent the default, and for now all I'm going to do is just console log the stuff that we need from in here. Okay, so I'm going to say console.log, and this is where we want to actually get the whatever the current to do is, and we can get that because we're setting the state up here. We can get it from this new to do piece of state. So I can just call console.log new to do, and what that's going to do is whenever we submit this form, it's going to prevent the default, and then it's going to log out whatever is in that text box at that point in time. So if we try that out and head over to our console, we should be able to see that when we type some stuff in here, like hello, and then press enter, it logs that out there. So this is how we can kind of get this stuff and basically construct some objects inside our to-dos piece of state. So what we actually want to do here, we probably want to just return if the thing's blank, because we don't really want to be in a position where I have to press enter and it logs out nothing, or it adds an empty to-do item. So after we prevent the default, I'm just going to say if new to-do is empty, then we just want to return. And what that should mean is that if I try and do stuff here, it's just going to return straight out of the function. It's not going to log anything. But if I've got stuff typed in, it'll log it out. Cool. So the next thing that we want to do is basically just call this set to dos method that we have up here. But because we don't want to manipulate the state of it, we need to be a little bit clever. So we're going to say set to dos, which we're going to pass in the kind of new state that we want, which we know needs to be an array. And what we basically want to do is we want to get all of the existing to-dos, and then we want to put on the end our new to-do. And we can do that by bringing in any existing to-dos that we've got, and we can use the spread operator to do that. So that's just going to get all of the existing to-do objects. And then we want to put in an object. So each of these to-dos is going to be an object which has an ID and also some text. And the objects are going to look like this. So we're going to have an ID, which is going to be the date now, like a timestamp, because we can rely on that being fairly unique. And then we need the text, which we can get from our new to-do. So just to recap what this function is going to do, every time that we change the text that's in this box, we update this state here in new to do. So new to do holds the string which is in here always. And then whenever we submit the form by pressing enter, we're going to run this handle new to do form, which is going to just return if there's nothing in there, or if there is, it's going to get all the existing to dos. And then it's going to add a new one with an ID that's the current timestamp, and the text is going to get from the new to do state. All right, so that's kind of what we're aiming to do here. Now the last thing that I want to do is just clear out the text box. So we want to be able to reset the form basically. So I can just do that by saying e.target, which will be the form dot reset. And that's just going to reset the form for us. In order to use this stuff, let's actually go and go and add some stuff in here and replace this stuff that we've got down here. So at the moment, we're just rendering out two list items. And what we actually want to do is we want to map over all of the to-dos. So we can do that with to-dos .map. And we're going to use an arrow function in here with a to-do item in it. And we want that to return some JSX, which is going to be a list item. And then inside the list item, for now, let's just put the to-do text. And now when we add stuff, we can see we're adding in our items, which is kind of cool. But if we come over and have a look in here, there's an error down here, which is saying that we need a unique key when we're mapping over these. And that's just something that React needs to keep track of what's what. So we need to add a key property to this list item here. Now we could do something like index and use the index. But as it happens, we've got this unique ID on each of our to-do items. So we might as well just use that. And now hopefully our error's gone away. Cool. So we've kind of set up the basics of a decent to-do system here, right? One of the things I quite like to do with this, though, is make it so that we can delete to-dos as well. And that shouldn't be too hard, right? All we're going to do is inside our list item here, we're just going to add a link, essentially, or a button, which we can do like this. So we'll add a button, and that can just have a cross in it. And then we want to give this an on-click handler. Now, because we need to pass in the current key for this, I'm going to use an anonymous function in here, and basically say that we want to call a function that we haven't written yet called remove to do. And then into that function, we're going to pass the to-do's ID. And if we now come and define this function, the error is telling us up here it doesn't exist. So if we define a new function called remove to do, which is going to take in an ID. And then all we want to do is basically the same thing we did here. We want to set the to-dos to the new state. So we want to say set to-dos. And we want to set this to the array of to-dos, which is essentially everything except for the one that we've passed in. So if we just said to-dos, this would set the to-dos to the current, like it would set this to the current state, which isn't much use to us. What we want to do is filter out the one that we've got the ID for here. So we can do that with filter. And filter is just going to take an anonymous function, which is going to have a to-do. And then we basically want to filter based on the to-do ID not being equal to the ID. So this is going to go to to-dos. It's going to look at each to-do in turn, and it's basically going to say only return them if the to-do ID is not equal to the ID that we've passed in. Okay, and that will hopefully allow us to remove the to-do item. Okay, cool. So all I've done is I've changed that button to an anchor tag because the button was it was basically messing with the form, because buttons are part of a form, I think. So what's this all about? Yeah, okay, let's not worry about accessibility for now. So there we are. We now have a setup where we can add in a bunch of things, and if we want to delete some of them, we can just head over and delete them, which is cool. So the next thing we want to do is have a look at styling this, because it currently doesn't look very nice. So if we head over to our SAS file, we can see that we've just got some really basic stylings on this component. So I'm going to add another couple of classes in here. We're going to add a class on here called to-do list, and then we're going to add a class on each item just called to do. What that should mean is we can head over here, and I'll tell you what I'm actually going to do. I'm just to save having to add things in all the time, I'm just going to come up and set this initial state so that it has a couple of objects in it already. So we can just say like ID is 1 and text is like buy milk, and then let's just duplicate that and say this is buy cheese and give that an ID of 2. And there we are, we've got these kind of initial values in here now. We'll move them later on. So the first thing I want to do when I'm styling this is just get rid of some of the basic styling here. So I just want to say to-do list. I think, did I call it to-do list? to-do list, yeah. So to-do list, list style type none, and that's going to remove those for us. I can never remember which thing the padding is on, if it's on the item or not. Okay, so it's on the UL, so I just want to say padding is none, and that should center everything for us. And for now, I'm just going to kind of leave it like that, and we'll worry about fixing some of this other stuff in a sec. Now we want to have a look at each to-do, and each thing in the to-do, we want to give this text align of left. And I probably want to just give this, let's give this a little bit of padding all around, actually, of 1em. And then let's just give these a background of, say, red for now, so that we can see what we're doing. So what I'm actually going to do is turn these into flex items. So display flex. And that's not actually going to change very much at all about where things sit in here, but it does mean each of these things inside of it now are a flex item, because each to do is a flex container. So all we want to do with this is just use this to bring the X's over to the right. So we're just going to look that up on the internet. Okay, so that took a little bit of Googling, but essentially we can set this up as a flexbox container, which will have everything default properly. But I've forgotten about this. We can also set a margin left on the anchor tags that are in it, and that's just going to push them way over to the right, because this margin left of auto will fill up all of the extra space inside the flex item, or inside the flex container. Cool. So now we've done that, let's do a little bit more styling on these anchor tags maybe. Let's move text decoration. Let's maybe give them a padding of 1 pixel. Let's give them a font weight of bold. In fact, let's actually give them a padding of like 3 pixels. Probably looks a bit nicer. And if I just take this background off, cool. And then maybe I actually want to set their color to be a bit transparent. In fact, I could say their opacity is like 0.5, and then we can say that when they're hovered over, we want to set their opacity to 1. Cool. So that looks kind of good to me, maybe. But what we probably want to do is a little bit of styling on our actual to-dos. So I think actually I'm going to take the padding off those. No, I'm not, because I want a slightly bigger click area for these. So we're just going to put a background on them again. And we can kind of do this however we want, but for now I think I'm just going to say margin bottom is margin bottom is, say, 1 rem, and that's going to space them out a little bit. And then I want to give these a bit of padding. Say, what does this look like? Probably a bit big. Yeah, it's a bit big. 0.5 rem. That's kind of all right. And there's currently something weird going on here with, okay, that's the line height probably. So I'm just going to set their line height to 1. that the span? Okay, what happens if I set this to no? No, didn't think that would work, never works. Anyway, let's just set a border radius to say 3 pixels. Okay, let's call it 5 pixels. And now let's just change the background of these to something a bit lighter like that. Cool. It's really bugging me that it's to do with the line height, I think. Yeah, because the padding's even all the way around. Yeah, whatever. Let's not worry about it now. Cool. Anyway, so that's styled up a little bit. We should probably do something about styling up this form as well, just to make that look a little bit nicer. So I can actually do that just by styling the input. It's not great practice, but if I just style up the input inside here, and we just say font size is 2M, and take the border off and put a I don't know, like 5 pixel. What does that look like? That's probably a bit big. Let's and then maybe a little bit of padding. Why is that? I'll tell you what, let's give the input a width. Cool. And there we are. So we can now head over here and we can add to do items. And if I just close the dev tools down, and I can also delete these items easily enough down here. So there we are. That was a quick look at React hooks. It was a little bit messy, a few errors in there. Let me know if that was useful in the comments down there. I haven't made many screencasts yet, so if you found that useful, please let me know. It'll encourage me to make some more. Cheers.